we have two exceptional people that have agreed to spend time with us this afternoon. So I just want to thank Anna Barber, who is our Tech Track Keynote, and Stephen Kahn, who is going to be moderating. And I'd like to say they're also both members of our advisory board for the Roberts Innovation Fund, which focuses on really exciting things coming out of the School of Engineering and Applied Science. So they're both just phenomenal people to have with us today. And I will turn it over to Stephen.
Hello. Good afternoon. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, to have a chance to chat with Anna and hear about her career and her perspectives on technology and innovation. Anna is a partner at venture firm M13 with offices in Los Angeles and New York, I believe, with over 350 million under management.
$1 billion, actually. That's just our last fund is this 350.
All right,
Yes.
okay.
If you like $1 billion, it's a round number.
Yeah, much cleaner.
Yeah.
She previously was a managing director at Techstars and has invested in over 100 companies, many companies. In addition to investing, she's also the chair of Pledge LA, which is an initiative of the Annenberg Foundation to drive diversity in the technology ecosystem. So another fascinating area that I can't wait to hear more about and ask about. So with that.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm just going to introduce Stephen for those of you who don't know him because he's pretty amazing and I'm excited for this to be a conversation. So Stephen got an undergrad degree from Yale in applied physics and an MBA from UCLA, which is so cool. I've been living in LA for the past 20 years, so love that you're also an Anderson grad. Early in his career, Stephen was actually in venture. He was probably one of the first Kauffman fellows, I think, right? And worked at Redpoint, worked at Yahoo, and then worked at a startup that was acquired by Google. And Stephen has been at Google for over 12 years, which is pretty incredible, and done some amazing things, including help launch Chrome, Cloud, Drive, and is now the director of operations at Google Cloud AI. So I'm really excited later in the hour to get into talking about AI. We've already had some really interesting discussions, over the course of the conference about applied AI and where it's going. So that will be a fun thing to get into. But let me first say it's such an honor to be here, and I want to thank Claudia and the entire Yale Ventures team for inviting me here. I'm a Yale 90 grad. I'm a Yale Law 1995 grad. So I spent 7 formative years here at Yale. And it's really where I learned to think, learned to ask great questions, built the network of friends and people that later became coworkers, who really helped form me. And I haven't spent much time on campus because I've been living in LA. And so it's just a real joy to be back here and very excited to start contributing more and just also to see the innovation community here and the investments of all kinds that Yale is making into fostering entrepreneurship and innovation is pretty exciting. So thanks so much.
Yeah, it is great to be back on campus, and it is amazing to see how innovation has really taken root here at Yale and grown on the campus and with the faculty and the students, and the broader community here in New Haven and Connecticut. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about my background. Let me first say I want to thank you all for giving us an hour of your time. It's also late in the afternoon. My main goal is not to bore you. If you do need to check your phone or social media or leave to take a phone call, I completely get it. Imagine that there's actually a fire here. This is actually a fireside chat. I'm hoping to get into some stuff that you normally wouldn't hear at a tech conference and sort of give you the real deal on my life, my career path, the decisions I've made and kind of how that's led me to where I am. And then also what I think about investing and all that. Of course, we'll talk about that. But, I'm going to try to be actually real and refreshing, and hopefully that will be my strategy to keep your attention and your engagement. And I look forward to also answering your questions. So,
let's start there. Let's start with your background and your journey.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So, like I said, I'm a double Yale. I'm a proud double Yale. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't one of those people, that had it all figured out, like, ever. My parents had these incredibly interesting careers. My father was a book editor and my mother was a literary agent. And so I grew up in New York City with this kind of like magical childhood surrounded by authors and writers and interesting people, which to me got translated as like a lot of pressure to do something super interesting with my life. But I didn't really know what that was. So my early career, I was kind of trying things out. After law school, I practiced corporate law for a couple of years. I did environmental policy for a while. I got a phone call one day, and this is kind of a pattern that repeated itself. What do you think about coming to interview at McKinsey? And I had been practicing law for 2 years, and I thought, that sounds interesting. I bet I could learn a lot doing that. And so I did. I went to McKinsey for 2 years, and it was great basic training. And I got another, it wasn't a phone call because it was someone I was working with, but I got another opportunity. It was 1999 at this point, and Internet 1.0 was kind of taking off. And there was this giant sucking sound, which was people leaving banking and consulting to go to San Francisco to build the future. And I was like, that is what I want to do. I want to go build the future. So I got a job offer to go work at petstore.com. I don't know if we talked about this, and I love that you guys just laughed because like how funny that whole thing was, like poster child of like .com 1.0 disaster. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. So first of all, there were literally 4 companies, each of which raised more than $10 million for the same business model that didn't work, which was shipping 40-pound bags of dog food across the country. We literally, every single customer that we acquired, we lost money on. So we would joke about this internally. Oh, wow, we just acquired a bunch of new customers. Our burn rate just went up. But that's the world it was. And we decided we had to outspend the competition because if we could just win and just only be the last one standing, then it was all going to be amazing. And we were going to be able to build this incredible future and somehow we'd figure out how to do it profitably. But that was like way later. So I got there as a director of marketing. Now, you're probably thinking, what do you know about marketing at this point? Because you were a lawyer and a strategy consultant. The answer is like really nothing. But it was sort of the early days of the internet, and like not a lot of people knew a lot about how to market in that environment. So it was actually okay. So I was doing that job, and 2 weeks after I got there, the entire product team quit because they had a fight with the CEO. And at that point in 1999, you could not hire product people in San Francisco. So the CEO looked around and said, where is there a warm body that I can put in this job? And he put me in the VP product role. And that was the greatest gift because I learned how to be a product leader, and thinking as a product person has really been very important in sort of everything I've done since. But the engineering team, they were super pissed because they thought I didn't know anything. I was this, snotty little McKinsey person with fancy degrees, and what did I know about product, right? They handed me on the first day the design of everyday things and said, don't talk to us until you read this. So it ended up, I'm joking about it, but it ended up being great. We had a terrific partnership, and I did that job for 2 years and fell in love with product. And then that company really blew up spectacularly, after the market crashed, and pets.com, which was the sock puppet. So they had gone public. And I won't tell too much inside baseball because I don't want to throw people under the bus, but we made some strategic decisions that weren't so great. And we ended up getting sold basically in a fire sale to the sock puppet company. And then I had another amazing experience because the CEO, seeing that I had a law degree, said, great, everyone else is getting laid off. Will you stick around here and help us wind down the company? And so my job was, I had a list of all of our vendors, and my job was to call them and tell them they were getting 10 cents on the dollar. And I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. They're going to scream at me. They're going to be so mad. Not the case at all. I learned there that they were very happy to be getting anything back because they knew what kind of situation we were in. And I was like, oh, wow, everything's negotiable. Like everything's actually negotiable. So that was actually really, really, bad experience that turned into a good experience. So then I kind of, I kicked around San Francisco and did a couple other startup jobs, but just to not take all day telling this, I saw that there were these interesting artists in San Francisco who were making stuff in Flash. And I thought, like, Hollywood should know about this. Like, there's like digital artists here who like Hollywood should know about. And I became kind of obsessed with this idea of bringing digital talent to Hollywood. So I moved to LA and opened a digital talent management agency, which was like really bad idea because it was like 10 or 15 years probably too early, which is also like another theme of my career is like being too early. Like one of the startups I was at in between was called Rent Anything, and it was like eBay for rentals, but it was sort of pre-mobile phone, pre-location tracking, anything like that. We're going around trying to get people to rent out their lawnmowers to their neighbors. It was like a crazy thing to do in like 2001. So anyway, too early. So I was in entertainment for about 6 years. I built a roster of clients. I learned how to produce movies. What that was really good for was sales. Like I got really good at just picking up the phone and like cold calling people and kind of shilling my clients. But I ultimately found entertainment pretty unsatisfying because the people that had the most talent, I couldn't get them work. And the people who were getting the work were like these, I don't know, just pedestrian, like people who got jobs writing for reality TV. And I was like, this is not what I was put on this planet to do. So I started really thinking like, what am I here for? Like, what is my greater purpose? And in the meantime, I got married. I started having kids. So these questions sometimes would go to the back burner and I was sort of cruising along until one day I got on a cross-country flight when I was 7 months pregnant with what was my fourth kid because I had married a guy with 2 kids and then we had a third one and then there was a fourth one coming. So I sit next to this woman who went to Yale. She was class of 86 at Yale, so we had not overlapped. And she was wearing a t-shirt that said Mrs. Darcy. Now, I normally don't talk to people on planes, but if you see a woman wearing a t-shirt that is a sly reference to your favorite book, you have to talk to them. So I talked to this woman, and by the end of the flight, she had pitched me the idea of something that we would come to call Scribble Press, which was a store for kids to make their own books. So it was Build-A-Bear for books. And she heard about my background in tech and also that my family had been in publishing. And she just looked at me and she said, I know this is crazy, but I think you're the right person to build this company with me. And so we did. So I get off this airplane and I tell my husband, who was in the back with the other 3 kids, like exhausted, right? While I'm in business class. I'm like, guess what? I met this woman and we're going to start a company together. And he just looks at me. He looks at my stomach. He looks at the other 3 kids and he's like, you want to do a startup now? And I was like, yes, I do. I think that's a great idea. And we did. I had the kid and then we raised money when he was 6 months old and we were kind of off on that next adventure. And so I guess for me, that's a lot. But here's the thing. I didn't have a choice. And this is something I always say to founders. Do the thing if you just don't have a choice, because it's really hard. And if you have any other choice, this isn't like, oh, should I take job A or take job B? This is like, I can't sleep because this idea is keeping me up at night. And I know it, I'm the right person to do it. I know if I don't do it, that no one's going to do it. And that is the feeling that I had about this company. When she told me the idea, I was like, the hair on my arm stood up. Now, it ultimately didn't work out, I guess you could say. I mean, I'll tell a little more about that, but like, that's kind of not the point. The point is like, I had to do it and I had to bring that thing into the world. So anyway, so we went and raised money for that. And I mean, lots of amazing lessons. I have a whole talk I do called the 5 smartest and dumbest things I did as a founder. And you can kind of trace the evolution of the company to decisions I made, both good and bad. And ultimately, it was an amazing experience we created. We had a store in LA and 2 in New York. We created an iPad app around it. We touched a lot of people. I still get stopped by people in the street saying that their kids created books at Scribble Press and they still have them. And it was one of the most meaningful things they did with their children when they were little. But ultimately, the big mistake we made with that company was growing too quickly. We had someone come in and offer us money to expand to New York when we had only been open in LA for 3 months. And this was a very difficult business model to get right because it had a lot of operational cost and the physical footprint was very expensive. And so you have to get throughput exactly right with a model like that in order to, make it profitable. And you have to really understand the seasonality and, pricing, right? So many things go into getting that right. And we hadn't fine-tuned it enough. But, someone's offering you money to expand and telling you how amazing this thing that you've created is. It's very hard to say no to that. So all of a sudden we went from having one store that wasn't yet making money, probably could have, wasn't yet, to 3 stores losing money at the same time. Not a formula for success. And so after we got open in New York, had the big splash and everyone's excited and Bono comes to the opening and oh my God, I looked around and realized we were going to have to raise like $25 million to make the whole thing work, and it just wasn't going to be possible. So we essentially ended up kind of breaking up the company and selling it for parts, is what happened. Am I going on too long, or is this?
This is fascinating.
Okay.
I heard Bono mention.
Are we good?
Keep going. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, Jennifer Garner used to be a customer in LA. I have her cell phone number. Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was a while there. It was exciting. So then, what did I do after that? So then I was kind of having a little bit of a crisis because, as you can see, how old am I now? I am my early 40s. I'd never then. I'd never actually had a career plan, and I was like, oh, somebody said so. A Yale law professor used to say the dream of every Yale law student is to be a promising young lawyer at the age of 40. And that is kind of true. It's like I wanted to keep all my options open. I wanted to always have all that potential before me. But at this point I was in my early 40s and the windows start to close and you're kind of I can't keep reinventing myself. I got to pick a lane here. So I decided that I wanted to become a coach for founders, specifically female entrepreneurs, because I had really struggled as a CEO with some what I think of now as very rookie mistakes. Mistake number 1 being thinking that I had to have all the answers, thinking that the job of the founder and CEO was to know everything. Because in academia, right, that's kind of the model, right? It's you're taught to be smart and have the answers, right? And have a good argument for everything, right? In particular in law school, have a cogent, coherent argument instead of having an open mind and curiosity and surrounding yourself with other people who, are gonna, have the answer. So I got very interested in how do we help people uncover their blind spots, address them, and be able to scale their own leadership along with their companies. And so I thought with this experience and the right training, I could be an amazing coach for other founder CEOs. So I was I was going through a coaching program. So this was 2016 now, and I was I was coaching other founders. I was like, this is going to be my next chapter. I'm going to coach founders. I had no interest in investing. Or I didn't think I did. I didn't really even know much about it. And I got a call. Hey, they're launching a Techstars accelerator in LA. Why don't you interview? So I think it's important to note that up until this point, except for going through the recruiting process, when I was at Yale Law School, I had never applied for a job. And to this date, I still have never applied for a job other than through the recruiting process in law school. So somebody called me and said, we want to put you in this process here. So I said, fine. So I went and went through the Techstars interviewing process. Now, this was interesting because I did not have the credentials that they were looking for. And, there's this very famous data set that says that women, when they see that they don't have the credentials, they won't apply, or they have to have 100% of them, whereas men will apply for a role, as you should, by the way, if they have 50% or something, right? And that's what you should do. You should apply. So if this ever happens to you, apply for the job. But I kind of bypassed all that because, somebody just asked me to apply. So it wasn't even a decision I had to make. 10 interviews in. So at a certain point, I find out who all the other finalists are. Because, there's this thing on LinkedIn that's people who looked at your profile are also looking at these other people, right? So I saw all the other people and I was instantly very intimidated because they were all way more qualified to lead Techstars in Los Angeles than I was. They had more investing experience. They had more like tech background. I wasn't like, I had tech background, but it was sort of, weird and misshapen. So I was convinced this whole time I'm not getting the job. So I kind of went into the interview process like very unattached to the outcome, I guess. Kind of curious that they kept calling me back. And at the end, I mean, the punchline, so I guess I should just get to the end of the story. But I got the job, and I said to Cody Sims, who hired me, and I don't know if you've ever heard this story, Claudia. I said, Cody, like, I am not the most qualified person. Like, how did I get this? Like, why did you hire me? And he said, you know what we realized was the most important thing for this role is emotional intelligence, and you blew everyone out of the water. And I thought that was so interesting because the reason that happened was because I'd been doing all this work on myself, because I was going through this coaching process. And also, I kind of skipped over this, and this is like the longer version of my personal story, but I had gotten sober a few years before and done a ton of work on myself and was just showing up in a very authentic way that allowed them to see how I think, how I show up, how I am in conversation with people. And that's what they wanted. It wasn't about achievements or resumes or like anything like that. That was a really, really important lesson for me. And that's really been a guidepost for me in the rest of my career. It's not what I know. It's not the smart things that I say or even my, clever investment thesis, that the most important thing is, am I able to fully focus and be present in a conversation, right? And bring like my entire being and, attention to that moment, right? And that's really what drives success, and impact on people. So I had the opportunity to launch Techstars in Los Angeles starting in 2017. And it was a great time to do that because the LA tech ecosystem was starting to take off. And the thing about Techstars as a place to train investors, it's an amazing training ground because you have to make so many decisions so quickly. So the way it worked then was we had to pick 10 companies all at once, and we looked at 1,000. So I did that for 4 cycles, 10 companies. I had to decide all at once. And I remember the first time I went to make an offer to my first company, I called up Cody again and I said, okay, well, I'm ready to make an offer. The company was called Slingshot Aerospace. It was an spatial data analytics company with a female CEO who had just gotten out of the Air Force. Really, really interesting company that ended up being my first investment. I said, who do I go to get this approved? And he just kind of looked at me like I was crazy, like, you get to make the decisions. I was like, oh, wow, I get to make the decisions, just me. Right? Other people could give me advice, but I get to make decisions. Also very valuable because then you're like on the hook. You can't hide behind some investment committee told me to do it or not to do it, right? I was making these decisions. So the portfolio I built there, I decided that what I really cared about was helping female and underrepresented founders get an early start. And running an accelerator program is a great place to do that because you're investing so early anyway. You can really make the decisions, based on the team and people. So I did that for 4 years, and I was honestly really happy doing that. I got involved with Pledge LA, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion initiative for the LA tech ecosystem. I launched a little pre-seed fund on the side with some friends, so I was making more investments through that. I was just investing in a lot of founders and, really building an amazing community in the LA ecosystem, mostly around underrepresented founders, honestly. And then I got another phone call saying M13 was expanding its team and did I want to talk to them? And they wanted someone with early stage experience. And someone had told them that I was ungettable. And so that made them really want to hire me. So that was kind of lucky that someone said that, I wasn't really looking to move. I really didn't want to be in venture. I wanted to help founders. And it wasn't clear to me that moving into a bigger investing role was the way to do that. But I had also heard that this was an incredible team of people, all former operators, which I was, and that DNA was really important. And so I said, I thought I'd give them a chance. My partner, Carter, is married to Paris Hilton. And so this was during COVID. And one of my interviews was at their house and one of her tiny dogs peed on me during the interview. So that was exciting. And I wasn't really sure. It was like a very little amount because the dog was so tiny. I wasn't sure if I should like tell him or like how to handle it, but anyway, it became a funny story later. So I've been at M13 for 3.5 years. It was a little bit of a tough transition going from pre-seed to writing bigger checks. The first time I wrote a $9 million check, I was terrified because it was so much money. But it's really all the same thing. It's picking amazing founders that inspire me and that I think are building something that's going to make the world better. And then just absolutely being as helpful as I can to them, whether it's asking an amazing question, just giving support, opening up my network. A founder whose board I was on is actually here in the audience. So I don't know, maybe she can tell you more about that. But yeah, that's how I got here. And, so here's the thing. I'm 55 years old. I'm on a steep learning curve every day. I have gotten super excited about artificial intelligence in the last 2 years. I have gone deep on understanding the technology and really formulating my investment thesis around it. And, I'm just a big believer in life. We don't coast. It's like you got to keep moving forward or you just stagnate. And so, and I'm just a deeply curious person. So it's just, I wake up every day and I learn something new from entrepreneurs like all of you, I guess. So.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you for walking us through that. And clearly, you've picked up so many interesting experiences from, shutting down a company to jumping into a new role, multiple new roles. I'm curious, early on, when you would get those calls and you were at a law firm and then it was McKinsey and then let's go out to California. What was motivating you at that point? For later on, I hear the mission components. I hear that. Was it just a sense of adventure? Was it just trying something new? What helped you to make some of those choices? Frankly, for many mere mortals, for the rest of us, it'd be hard to leave the safety of a McKinsey or went to law school at a law firm and to make those choices. Yeah.
I've thought about this a lot. I didn't realize for a long time I was doing it differently from other people, but I don't have a risk gene. Like I'm highly risk tolerant, I guess. So all I saw was the upside. I didn't see the downside. Right. And the upside was learning something new. And like you said, having an adventure, I slept in an igloo once for 30 days. I traveled around the world when I switched jobs for 7 weeks all by myself. I just took chances, I guess. And because all I saw was the opportunity, which isn't necessarily a good thing, right? It's like you should have a little bit more, right? It's like someone who just jumps out of a plane and forgets that they, need to have a parachute. It's like so now I'm a little bit more aware of having a parachute, but I think, in hindsight, looking back in retrospect, I can see that it really benefited me. Because everything that happens to me now, every experience I have, I've got something I can pull out of my backpack and say like, oh yeah, I've done that, or I've seen this situation, or I have some experience with that because I put myself in this situation of being a beginner over and over again. And so as a result, I learned so many different things.
Fascinating. No. Just go for it. Turns out that you don't necessarily need a parachute, or the analogy is you're not actually jumping out of the plane because there's ways to land on your feet. And it's so cool to hear how you've made those choices. And
look, let's be realistic, right? I had a safety net, which was I always knew if I needed a place to go and someone to feed me, right? I had a place to go. I could call my parents and they would do that. I did not take advantage of that very much, but I knew that it was there. So I think it's just important to point that out, that not everybody has that ability to take crazy risks with their career, and it's also not something I would do today because I'm supporting a family. So I was fortunate to have flexibility to take a few more risks earlier in my career.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. As I heard your story later on, perhaps after Pet Store, more elements of kind of a mission driven. There, with the book startup, it just has to exist. I think you said you had started a family, then you had kids. So I heard more mission driven kind of motivation coming into your story. Is that something that you feel has cultivated and developed later on? Has that always been there? How has that come to manifest for you over time?
Yeah, I definitely think it's developed over time. So yes, Scribble Press was very much a mission-driven endeavor. I was worried with the advent of devices that kids were losing their love of books. And I was very interested in creating something that would help kids love reading and writing. And that's what kind of drove me there. That's what I got excited about, was seeing kids experience it for the first time. And now, the way I think of mission is maybe more on a deeper level. Like I think about my mission as showing up and being of service to the people around me, right? So it's not so much, I'm trying to accomplish this or a specific sort of social impact goal, as it is about like how I want to show up. And that's kind of been the evolution, moving from more of a specific goal, so literacy, to supporting women in technology, women and underrepresented founders in the tech ecosystem, which I still care very deeply about. But now I'm really more at a point in my career where I think it's about wanting to positively impact everyone that I run into on an individual day.
That's fascinating, and it's such a powerful motivator. Let's talk a little bit, transition out into your role as an investor. But I would imagine that you have your own unique take when you're your own lens, when you meet a founder, when you hear the pitch, when you evaluate the opportunity, that is informed by this sense of service, this sense of having an impact on the people around you. I'm curious to hear you talk about and share how you look at companies, and how that maybe compares or contrasts with others in the industry.
Okay, so I'm going to give some examples of specific companies because, like you said earlier, I've invested in over 100 companies. So when I flash back on the 100 companies and think about like what's the through line, right? I get very excited and compelled by founders who themselves have a strong mission, something they're trying to accomplish. So in 2019, I met this founder, Jing Gao, and she really, she felt really strongly that Chinese cuisine had gotten short shrift in the United States, and that we think about it as like cheap takeout, right? And that actually the cuisine is complex and it's elevated. And she wanted to build a brand around elevating how we see Chinese cuisine. Her company was called Fly by Jing. So some of you may have seen it. They make a delicious Sichuan chili crisp. Where's that? Fly by Jing. You can get it at Walmart and Costco, and actually Whole Foods. Yeah, it's available everywhere now. So
it's delicious.
Yeah, it's delicious, right? So it wasn't a tech company, but she had this big vision about reimagining how we see Chinese cuisine. And she was such a compelling founder. She was a chef. She was just an incredible force, the way she told the story and created like this mythology around the company. And I just thought like, this is something I want to support. I'm not going to be part of it, right? I'm not part of it, but I'm like, I wanted to kind of endorse her vision and kind of, set her off on her way. Slingshot Aerospace, another one. This woman, Melanie Strickland, had spent 20 years in the Air Force and felt very, very passionate about the lack of data coming from satellites that was available to the military, in particular as the Space Force was starting to develop, and she wanted to build a company around that. I know nothing about this. I had no idea if the technology worked. What I knew was that she was going to build something amazing. So as I look back on, some of the companies that I've chosen to back, it's like, is there great founder market fit? And is this market really compelling? And that's really at the core of it. And so then when we flash forward to M13 and sort of doing more Series A investing, that still applies. The founder and the team is like, really 90% of everything is like, is this the right team to do this idea? And do we think that the market has potential? Because What the product is today is just less relevant. You could change the product. It's really the ingredients. Are they building in the right space, and do they have the right people to build? It was just announced yesterday. We led the Series A for a company called Maven AGI. So we were talking about this maybe a little bit yesterday. So Maven is an AI for customer support. So you could think about it like AI chatbot that answers your customer support question. There's a lot of people doing this. It is a very crowded space. So, and this was not a small Series A, and it was not an inexpensive deal. So why did we do it? We did it because the team was just phenomenal and exactly the right team to do it. Jonathan Corbin, the CEO, had been the head of customer success at HubSpot and had a very sophisticated view on what these clients need. The clients being software companies selling complex software to other companies, right? What do they need in their customer support? So if you're HubSpot and you're a HubSpot customer, you're going to HubSpot's customer support. HubSpot is a very complicated product. So getting your question answered is super important because your business is relying on it, and also really, really difficult. So that's what he was building for. And actually, Sami Shalabi, his CTO, came from Google. I know. It's like saying you're from New York. Do you know so and so? Right? It's like you were at Google. Like, do you know so and so? Right. But anyway.
Sami. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sami. Yeah, he was at the next desk, right? And Sami had built Google News and just had a very sophisticated viewpoint on sort of how to construct AI products. And their third co-founder, Eugene Mann, came from Stripe. So we knew it was a great team. So even though there were really well-funded companies doing the exact same thing, we saw something really special in this team. And so, if you just look at it on its merits, there was another company that had just raised $100 million doing the same thing. There was a third one that just raised 30. So why do we think we're going to win? Or why would we want to enter something that might feel like a crowded space, a little bit of a red ocean? But it's because like that team, we have faith that this team can do something great and win.
Fascinating. So you heard it. Think about what you're passionate about, and think about how you and your team can combine together to tell a story of why you're going to do something amazing. And what about on the other side of that, which is things which you've seen kind of pitfalls or where entrepreneurs either in the pitch kind of it's not a place to go, or perhaps after the funding when building the company. Talk to us about some of the things to watch out for that you've seen.
I mentioned this yesterday, but what I see a lot of founders do, especially around AI, it's a big pitfall, is fall in love with the product, not the problem. So, it's like when you have a new technology that can do something incredible, there's a temptation to think, what can I apply this to? And there's just the wrong starting point, right? Especially for thinking through founder market fit. It's like, and it's actually an interesting conundrum, because when you think about commercializing innovation that's developed in a university, you kind of have to start from the product, right? So it's kind of breaking this paradigm, but at some point very early in the process, you have to get to a problem that is really, really severe for customers, really painful for customers. You have to be, what do they say, a painkiller, not a vitamin. So I see that with a lot of founders, that they fall in love with their own product and how customers should behave, or things customers should want, as opposed to like what customers like actually do want, right? Maybe that resonates with you. Moving too fast. So before you get validation, or going for the big customer before you're ready for them. Or building your team too quickly and overspending and getting your burn rate up too fast. So there's ways of moving too fast. Moving too slow, that's another problem, right? Is like trying to get it perfect before you get it out into the market. So somewhere in there, there's a happy medium, a Goldilocks happy medium. I was like, everything I'm going to say is going to be contradictory. Under-hiring. So under-hiring is hiring people whose skill level is too low because you kind of want to maintain control and be able to like tell the team what to do. That's like a common sort of first-time founder mistake. And then over-hiring, which is you bring in somebody who led a 300-person team, but like can't exactly, right? So underhiring, overhiring, being overcapitalized can kind of make you slow and lazy. Being undercapitalized means that you don't have enough time to figure it out. The only thing that all startup successful founders have in common is that they didn't give up, right? And the only thing that successful founders have in common is that they never ran out of money. So don't give up and don't run out of money, and eventually you'll get somewhere, right? By the way, how many people in here, are there founders in here? Because, okay, founders.
Oh,
Okay.
fantastic.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
can't wait. We can.
Yeah.
We'll have time for questions. So would love to hear as well, folks out there, what your experience has been in terms of.
I don't know. So what advice do you have for founders, Stephen? I'm curious.
I was thinking about everything's kind of contradictory. There's one which, don't run out of money. Don't give up. I like those. But another one, which is kind of a rule, is I have never heard of a founder complain that they let someone go too soon.
Mm-hmm. That's a great one.
I'm sure it's possible, but in general, it's always I probably should have done that a month ago or a quarter ago.
So it's hire slow, fire fast. Yeah, I think that's a really good one.
And keep moving forward.
Yeah.
As you were talking about your approach to investing, I was thinking this phrase. It's like a very human-centric, person-centric approach to evaluating. And so there's another dimension of this. You even mentioned you could also look at different technology trends, industry trends, and that kind of thing. And I'm curious, how does that fold into your personal practice? Do you think about that kind of investment thesis, the technology trends, where it's going, or is it, how much does it play into how you
absolutely plays in? So I used to have the luxury of investing in a men's shoe company and a Sichuan chili hot sauce company and a geospatial analytics company, like all in the same week. Can't do that. So I invest in e-commerce infrastructure, B2B marketplaces, and applied artificial intelligence. So I have a couple, and we work with, at M13, we work with a thesis-driven approach called dig sites, where we'll kind of identify an area that we think is interesting, like a part of the market that's growing, and we'll build a little mini thesis around it. So some of the theses I'm working or running right now are what I'm calling, and actually I didn't coin this, I think it was Rex Woodbury, business in a box. So in VC, it's kind of a truism that you don't want to fund companies that are building for the SMB market because it's just too hard to sell to them. You can't make enough money. It's sort of too close to consumer in terms of what you're going to make revenue-wise, but then you have to almost sell it like enterprise because they require a lot of handholding. So it's typically an area that VCs are doesn't have a lot of currency in VC. I think with artificial intelligence, that's changing. I think because we have the ability now to build complete AI workflows for small businesses, that there's a whole category of business in a box that will literally possibly even train you how to do something, set you up in business, find your customers for you, and run the whole thing with artificial intelligence. So it's kind of similar to the pitch we heard for the building for immigration attorneys, right? That's a business in a box idea. I've seen this idea for nurses that want to get into doing cosmetic procedures in their free time, business in a box. So the pitch to the nurses, you've got free time on the weekends or off hours, you want to have a side hustle of doing, laser facial peels or something like that. We'll train you. Here's all your materials. Here's your billing. Here's your CRM, everything like that. Business in a box. So I think there's a whole bunch of opportunities. What I also love about that is economic empowerment, allowing people to make, income independently. I think that we're moving away from this idea of having a job and that's your career for your life, and that we're going to see more and more people who have portfolio careers and earn income from a lot of different places. So that business in a box kind of idea fits into also that demographic shift. So if you think about why is this an interesting thesis? So technology, you've got, applied AI coming in, demographic shift, you've got a situation where the economy is changing and the way people support themselves is changing. And so those two things together are just a very strong driver, like creating this new category. So that's one that I love. B2B marketplaces is another one I love. They tend to be in very kind of boring industries. Like I invested in a company that's a procurement platform for hotel renovations. I invested in another one that is, it's a market called Max Retail. That's a fashion marketplace for unsold inventory sitting in retail store floors that re-aggregates all of the inventory into a single product stream and then pipes it into commerce sites. So like on Walmart.com, you might buy something, but it actually gets shipped from a small storefront in Wisconsin. So what do I love about that? It's helping these small owners of these stores stay in business, because the biggest problem for these small store owners is that cash flow. Their cash is tied up in their inventory. So this is an amazing business because it's creating market liquidity where none existed, but it also has this kind of ancillary social benefit that I get excited about, which is helping these, these small store owners. So there's like another theme there. I invested in a childcare marketplace, another third B2B marketplace called Upwards. Upwards is a very fast-growing company that has the Department of Defense as a client and Amazon as a client, selling a childcare benefit. Tailwinds, government regulation, government subsidies, a massive push to provide childcare, which is really just a huge need to support the workforce. It's just the biggest problem for women in the workplace. On the supply side, so where's the childcare coming from? In-home daycare, licensed daycare providers. So these are mostly women entrepreneurs running daycares out of their houses who are making extra money. They're watching their own kids and they're getting paid to watch your kids. By the way, that is the lowest cost childcare that you could get. So this is a great solution for lower paid workers, for retail, for manufacturing, for hospital workers. So that's an incredible company that is linking together and creating a market and, this whole ecosystem. So anyway, I could go on and on.
Fascinating. And I think maybe we'll get some questions around those theses. Last question, then I'll turn it over for the audience. Such a wonderful range of experiences that you've had and so many lessons learned along the way. I'm curious if you could share what some of those kind of formative experiences were, whether they were, an education, if it was at Yale, if it was before that, if it was personal, family, certainly the work experience. But I'm wondering if you just share a couple of formative experiences that you think have kind of shaped how you view the world, how you problem solve, how you engage.
I think that, and I would have hated this answer when I was younger, I think the times I've failed have been my biggest teachers. Right. So when Scribble Press essentially failed, although, it's like I sold it, so I kind of got to squint and say it didn't fail, but let's be honest, right? Didn't really work. It took me a while to absorb those lessons, but what happened was I survived, right? And I went on and I reinvented myself and I got to do something else. Actually, after that, I got fired. So I took a job for a while at ABC Mouse, which was Age of Learning. I don't know if anyone's heard of this company. It's a $3 billion company. I got hired there as SVP of product. This is a very big job. And the CEO and I were just oil and water. He didn't want anyone running product. He wanted to do it. And I just, I had gotten told earlier in my career that I was a bad employee. So my boss at Pet Store told me I was a bad employee. And I just looked at him. I was like, Jeff, I don't know what you're talking about. When you tell me to do something and I agree with it, I always do it. And he just looked at me. He was like, yeah, you kind of just proved my point. Right. So with the CEO of Age of Learning, that did not go over well. And I got fired after 5 months. And I got the kind of fired where they give you a box, you put your stuff in it, and the general counsel walks you out the door with a check. So me then, this was 2013. This was like the worst day of my life. I don't get fired. I am an overachiever. And, I was miserable. I thought my life was over. I was miserable. But, again, I started over. I was on to the next thing. And, it's like, wow, that would have been a terrible place to work. I hated working there. It was not a healthy culture. Like, that was not the right place for me. So what a gift. Like, what a gift that I got, that I didn't spend more time there, wasting my time, right? Well, I was on my way someplace better. So, I mean, maybe these sound like truisms, but you know, and it's like easy to see it in the rearview mirror. It's just so hard to see it when you're there, you know?
It's excruciating.
Yeah.
There are truisms for a reason, but yeah, that have the bravery to put yourself in situations where you are likely to fail and the confidence to learn from them. It's very hard to do in the moment, but certainly looking back. So thank you for sharing that. I'm glad we got that.
So, you know, I mean, my style doesn't work for everyone. There's kind of like very authentic kind of, but you know, it's like, this is who I am. And I gotten to the point where, you know, I don't have any more blanks to give about like what other people think. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm just who I am. And like some people, I don't know, it doesn't work for everyone. And like, that's okay.
Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. All right, let's have some questions from the audience. Oh, great. Okay, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Anne and Stephen. By the way, your style works for me totally amazing. So you mentioned that you invest in the people in the team. So I wonder, are there any things you would like to share about the soft skills, people skills, like what can we do to boost our EQ to blow other candidates out of the water?
Oh wow, that's a good question. What can we do to boost our EQ to blow other candidates out of the water? I mean, I think it's like having a deep passion for what you're doing that just comes through and how you're talking about the business, right? If you're talking about like pitching me as an investor. So I got introduced to the CEO of Max Retail, the fashion resale marketplace, by Matt Kozlov, who was running Techstars LA after me. And he's like, you guys are either going to hate each other or love each other because you're like really, really similar. And I was like, what does he mean by that? What he meant by that was she has a very strong personality. But you know, this woman just walked in and she cares so deeply about these small shop owners. She used to own a dress shop, you know, and she was so eloquent about the problem. And she had also gotten so educated about the technology needed to build to solve the problem. And she had gotten the chairman of Brooks Brothers to be on her board of directors. And so I was like, wow, that's really a compelling human who, with an unfunded startup, you know, has gotten some Claudio Del Vecchio, the son of Leonardo Del Vecchio, the founder of Luxottica, was chair of Brooks Brothers, to be on her board. So you know, it's about your connection to the problem, I think, is really, and the ability to marshal the resources to solve it. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Also love your style. I've been also told I'm difficult to manage, so I get that and I can resonate with that. My question for you is, how do you feel about solo founders, and you know, kind of related to your analysis, similar to your mistakes and successes as a founder, but for your ventures that you've funded, do you really see that as a data point, you know, that matters, and what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, at M13, we invest in a lot of solo founders. I would say maybe the majority of the companies that we fund are solo founders. It's really about the ability to attract the right talent to build around you, right? So there's a little bit more emphasis and pressure if you're a solo founder to show that you can attract great people, you know, to come work for you, work with you, and also just support you in every possible way. So we're looking for that ecosystem, those people. It's like, I think about it sometimes like Pigpen, who's traveling around in a cloud of dust, but it's maybe not the best analogy, but the dust is like, you have a crowd of people following you around, right, that you've attracted to help you in your mission.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi, Matt. First of all, thank you also for the format that you've given us here. It's personal, it's rare to get this kind of opportunity. Thank you. In terms of investing theses, and in terms of your general views on artificial intelligence, I'd like to ask this of both of you. On one hand, an investor, on one hand, someone who's developing this focus on safety. How can we ensure AI safety in a for-profit setting? And is that possible?
I have my view, but I really want to hear what Stephen says because this is literally his job.
Yeah, it is absolutely possible. And I think the most important thing is that there is conversation, that there is dialogue happening inside of the company, amongst the employees, of people with different skills, with different backgrounds, and that you are, in a very clear-eyed way, just going through, okay, what are the potential risks here? What are the core, we can totally see this happening. What are the corner case risks? And at Google, what my team does is we go through a risk assessment process for every product launch. And then after that, risk is assessed in its various facets, and there's no cookie cutter for it. It's been described as bird watching. The longer you sit in the field and you look, the more you'll notice, the more birds you'll see that you didn't see when you first sat down. And so you do need time to think slow, but evaluate and assess the risks in its facets and its levels. And then we go through a process of risk acceptance, where you have to decide who in the organization is the one that's going to make the call that it is okay that we take this risk, it is not okay if we take that risk. All along the way, transparency, so that people can see what's happening and people can see the decisions that are being made. They have an opportunity to voice dissent. They have an opportunity to voice support. They have an opportunity to bring new data or information to the table. And so that's the most important thing, is to make sure that your company is talking about this and that you're doing it in a way that the risk assessment is separate from the risk acceptance, because what you don't want is someone to say, oh, I actually think the risk is low, because what they're trying to do is, make sure that something gets launched or passed. It's like, your job is to give your honest assessment of the risk level. Someone else will make the ultimate decision around what to do about it. So I think try to keep that separate, keeps the assessment more objective, but ultimately just make sure that you're talking and that you're doing it as transparently as possible. There's certainly some areas that are more sensitive, for example, around child safety, which you wouldn't be as open about. But that's my.
I could talk about this for a half an hour, but we have 2 minutes. But I think what you described is actually a business opportunity. So when you think about where AI is going, which is to the world of agents that will act independently to conduct complex human tasks, those agents will need guardrails. And what will those guardrails be? They will most likely be other separate AI. So as Stephen said, it has to be separate. You can't build in compliance and safety into the tool itself completely. So when you're allowing AI to operate independently, as we will in the future, there has to be a separate kind of compliance AI that is kind of working in concert with it. Just like in a company, you have a separate compliance department that is separate from, the sales and product team. It has to be separate for a reason because they have that job, right, which is just compliance. And I think we'll see a whole category of AI developed around compliance, around safety, around guardrails, particularly as companies launch AI agents that are conducting their work. Consumers are going to look at the company, as responsible for what those AI agents do, right? So there's a very high level, of sort of fidelity, safety, compliance that we need to achieve. And so there's going to be a whole category of businesses around making sure those AI agents remain, compliant and obey not just the laws, but, the unspoken, unwritten rules about behavior, the values, that the corporation, wants to put out in the world.
Thanks for that question. With that, I would like to thank all of you for your time and your attention today. And I would really like to thank Anna for sharing her story and her insights with us. It was really
Thank you, Stephen. That was so fun. Thank you.